The top story for us today here on News Channel. Iran's president says his country is under threat of military action from, quote, uncivilized Zionists. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad made that statement at his final address to the United Nations General Assembly today. Meanwhile, there are reports that Iran has conducted missile tests in the Persian Gulf. The Iranian military says it fired 4 missiles during a drill in the strategic Strait of Hormuz. The exercise took place near U.S.-led naval maneuvers, also going on not too far away from the area. Claudia Rosett is the UN expert with the Foundation for Defense of Democracy. She's standing by now in our Washington bureau with her take on this. Claudia, what do you think of Iranian leader Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, his speech to the UN, and how do you think other countries in the Middle East are going to respond to his talk about a nuclear?
I think he delivered to us this morning exactly his vision of what it's all about. This was a messianic declaration where he laid out his notion of in a fallen world, he is the agent of bringing back the Savior, and that there will be then a sort of marvelous, perfect world of peace, love, justice, brotherhood. It reminded me actually of a very grim version of Dr. Strangelove. But that's his style. And it actually is a terrifying thing he's laying out there. And I hope that world leaders are paying very serious attention, because we have right there, you want to ignite an arms race in the Middle East, as well as worry about his threats to eliminate the state of Israel. I would not take as just words. I think he's laying out the action plan. What
do you make about the testing going on right now of these missiles in the Strait of Hormuz, missiles that are designed to hit warships? How do you think that's going to play out? Any sort of major backlash internationally?
Very subtle, isn't it, to do that during the UN General Assembly? I think nothing that's going to actually damage Iran or hurt Iran, nothing that's actually going to stop it. It's yet another provocative gesture where Western leaders can say things and rattle things, but what actually is going to stop them? No, it's one more thing where Iran sees it can do this and get away with it.
Right, and we know provocation is often a hallmark when it comes to the regime in Tehran. Talk to me a little bit now, if you can, about Egypt's new leader, Mohamed Morsi. He also addressed the UN for the first time as the leader of Egypt. One of the issues he talked about, of course, freedom of speech in light of this whole video, innocence of Muslims, and the outrage over that. What are your thoughts about what Mohamed Morsi said?
Well, if you want to teach a class on George Orwell, I would use President Morsi's speech today, because freedom of speech, which he says he's in favor of, he says is fine as long as it's not freedom of speech that then insults things that he's against. In other words, the real question is who decides. And this is a long-standing campaign at the UN, which seems to be getting traction right now. The Organization of the Islamic Conference, which will have a conference in Egypt early next year, as he pointed out, has been pushing for a long time to get a global UN-backed ban on free speech, as we understand it, as anyone should understand it, on free speech, and subject it to the judgments of, say, governments such as Egypt or Iran or Pakistan, where it's seen as you're allowed to have free speech right up until the point where they don't like what you're saying, which actually contradicts the entire definition of free speech.
He also talked about a nuclear-free Middle East, but then talked about Egypt developing its own peaceful nuclear program, and I'm curious what exactly we should make of that. Does that mean that Egypt is moving in the same direction as Iran? Your take?
I heard it as disturbingly similar to the line that Iran puts out, which on the one hand they want a world free of nuclear weapons, a nuclear-free zone in the Middle East. At the same time, this insistence on the right to peaceful development of nuclear energy, which Iran has grossly abused, violating the Non-Proliferation Treaty, refusing to let inspectors look in. Egypt is sort of giving out the same line. The thing that's worrisome here is that Egypt does have a history of dabbling with nuclear technology. It's sort of been, some regard it, I'm among them, as one of the states to watch if there is a nuclear arms race that really gets rolling in the middle. Egypt is one of the prime candidates to be out in the front of that pack.
All right, Claudia, we've talked about Iran, we've talked about Egypt, and I want to finish this off with Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu making his speech to the United Nations tomorrow. What can we expect from him?
I think he's going to have to talk about Iran because it's a threat to the survival of his country. This is Iran repeatedly threatens to rub Israel off the map. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad arrived in New York and began talking about how Israel will be eliminated. He calls it a fake regime and so on. And Iran really is closing on nuclear weapons. They are far, far advanced at this point beyond what they were a few years ago. They have thousands more centrifuges. Israel, that is for Israel's government the #1 security threat without question. It's real. He has gone before the General Assembly before, Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel, to say to the world, you said you would never let this, the genocide happen again, do something. He's going to have to look for a way to, again, persuasively make that argument. I think a big part of his audience will be actually voters in the United States, because it's the voters, not the current U.S. administration, who actually seem to have some real understanding of what Israel needs for security at this point.
Claudia Rosett, a United Nations expert with the Foundation for Defense of Democracy, is joining us from Washington. Claudia, we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.